woman created this. Black woman created this. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Sundays with a Cherry on Top. I am your host, Cherry. I just want to apologize first for the late start, technical difficulties, things behind the, you know how sometimes things just happen and you just got to go with it. But we are here. We have a very exciting guest for you today. When I say we, you guys know, of course, my producer Bjorn and I, a really dear friend of ours, who's really, really busy, but took some time out of his busy schedules to sit down with me and to chop it up, to talk about his amazing career right now. And before we start, you guys know how I like to do. Please look for me on social media. Tell your friends. You can find me on Sundays with the Cherry on Top on Instagram. You can find me Sundays with the Cherry on Top on YouTube. You can go there. You can find past interviews, past cherry picks, some commercial snippets, and the full episodes that you can go back and watch for many amazing guests that we've had over the years. And you guys know how I like to start each interview with a fun fact. And a fun fact about Will Jackson Harper and I is that we are members of the same theater company, Ensemble Studio Theater, here in New York City. And I think that's how we met. I was trying to think of, you know how I try to figure out that exact moment when we met, and I can't remember, but it has to be through EST because we're members there together, as well as my producer Bjorn as well. So with that said, I guess I'm going to go ahead and just jump right into the interview because we are, running a little late, and I don't want to keep everybody because these interviews are in and out, and they're very fun, and I'm just ready to get it started because with the technical difficulties, I was like, come on, let's get this going. And Bjorn was like, keep your cool, Cherry, keep your cool. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna keep my cool. I'm gonna bring on Will, and we're gonna get this conversation started. So with that said, I want to bring on Will Jackson Harper to the stage. Yes. Hey. Woo! You know what? I was just like mortified. I was like, wait a minute, but you're such a good sport about it. So it's good to see you.
Good to see you too. And I understand about this computer stuff. I like any time I've had to Zoom, stream, anything, everything's all gone wrong at some point. So it's just like, I'm like, no, this is just the world we in.
This is the world that we are in. I know. Yeah. I mean, well, you know what? Let's talk about that for a second. How are you with these with Zoom auditions and things like that? Do you find it? Are you still used to it? Because for me, I'm just like, I miss the in person. I get it, but it took me a long time to get used to the self taping because I was just like, I don't know how to set up my own camera and all that. But now I'm a pro at it. But in the beginning, I was a hot mess.
Yeah, no, like the self taping is fine. I haven't had to do the real Zoom auditions where you log on and then you read with people. I mean, like I've been in some of those rooms, but I haven't had to actually audition, which it would drive me nuts because as soon as there's a freeze, my temper is lost. I'm upset, and so I haven't had to do that. But I've done a lot of self tapes and stuff like that, and that's fine. For me, it's just more like I just need to not be lazy about it, just because when I'm going into the room, it's like there's a person right there that can shame me. But then, like, if I'm doing a tape, it's like, I'll do it, and like half know the lines, and then just until I get it right eventually. But you don't have that when you go into the room. And
Amen. So, anyway. Yeah. I'm laughing because, I have those moments myself, but then I've had a couple of those Zooms where you have to really, read with the reader. And then there's like 4 or 5 producers at the top staring at me. Even when I pen, I see them at the corner of my eye and I'm just like, this is like, I do not like it at all. Right. I'm like, I cannot. Anyway, so let's get into this interview because I'm really excited to have you. And the reason why I asked you on is because you inspire me a lot and I admire you. Because you wear many hats and, you not only are an actor, you write. And I just want to get into where did your love of the arts come from before we get into your resume per se. But how did Will Jackson Harper become the artist he is?
Well, I mean, like I got into theater because of my mom, actually. She made me do theater because I was really shy. And I wanted nothing to do with it for a long time, just because I thought it was corny. You know, I thought it was like it's going to be me wearing tights and pumpkin pants and like saying corny stuff to somebody. You know, and I was like, I don't really want to do any of that. That's not my thing. And in middle school, I started doing theater, and I was actually doing a lot of improv. You know, improv scenes and finding funny stuff to do, and that's what sort of like, you know, really turned me on to like wanting to be an actor. Was like, oh, like this is like I'm okay at making people laugh sometimes, and that doesn't feel corny. It doesn't feel, you know, I don't feel like emotionally exposed in any way, which I couldn't handle. And so it was that's the thing that sort of kicked it off, and then I just kind of kept doing it through high school, and then through and I was, you know, the plan was not to like study it in college because I was like, this isn't a real career. You know?
Oh wow, that's funny.
But I was like, well, look, I'll audition for some schools and I'll see if I get any scholarship money to go and to study, and if I do, great. If I don't, I got my answer, and you know, who knows? Maybe even if I do get the scholarship, I'll switch majors somewhere midway through, and you know, like try to find something a little more stable. And but yeah, it's like every step of the way there was just, you know, when I was like, okay, well, if this doesn't break this way, then I'm going to get out. It, you know, like at each one of those junctures, it broke the way of go ahead.
The arts. Go to the arts. Yeah.
And so, yeah, and I just sort of always, I don't know, it's like the way I felt I could contribute, you know, like it made me feel special, you know, like I was like, I wasn't good at sports. I wasn't particularly a good student. And so just being able to feel like I have something that is unique.
Yes.
That not everyone can do, even though there's like a bunch of people at all the schools that I went to that could do it. Know? But just feeling like I was part of a club and feeling like I was contributing to that club in some way felt like really great. So I just kind of kept with it.
Nice. I'm glad you kept with it, because you're doing so good and great in the work that you're doing. And I want to get into, you're talking about how you started improv class and how you were coming into your own and your unique self and your unique voice in the acting world and theater. How did that segue into writing? Because before we get into your play Travisville, you were doing the improv classes and scholarship into college. Where did writing fall into that on that calendar?
Writing came in like way after the fact. Like that was something that just sort of actually being around EST and being around the Youngblood writers and stuff like that. I, you know, was, you know, inspired by so many of them. But then on top of that, we would go up to these like retreats, these writing retreats, and I would go as an actor, like working on a play for, you know, another writer from EST, and they would have these workshops and things, and you know, we were allowed to attend them, and so I would, and I mean, like I would have ideas of things that I would want to write, but I just couldn't see them through. And then, you know, I would go to these little workshops, pick up some little tips here and there, and then I was like, you know, I think this idea that I've been kicking around for a while, I'm going to give it a shot and see if it is anything. And yeah, and then like I was at one of those workshops when I started writing Travisville. And then,
wow. Okay. Yeah. And the inspiration of the story, what is the seed of that for you? The inspiration of Travisville?
Well, it's inspired by this book called The Accommodation by this writer, Jim Schutz. He's a journalist in Dallas. And it's his book covers this the displacement of an entire neighborhood around the Fair Park area in Dallas. You know, it was like a pretty racially mixed neighborhood, but you know, the black residents were finding that they were being paid to move less than the white residents who were living there, and it kicked off this whole thing. But the book actually is just like a long story of race relations in Dallas and the white civic leaders that are trying to keep things from, you know, from trying to stop any sort of civil unrest, and the black clergy, who some were more progressive, but then others were sort of working hand in hand with the civic leaders to keep things from getting out of hand. And so I just thought that was really interesting because it's like, Dallas is a big southern city that just didn't have any major racial upheaval during the civil rights movement. And I remember asking my mom, like, do you remember anything weird happening when you were a little kid? She was like, no, not really. There was like one sit-in that I kind of remember, but other than that, no. And I just thought that was really odd. And so it just led me to, find this book and read it. And, a lot of the conversations that people have, or like not even conversations, but quotes that people have from that book have inspired a lot of the characters that show up in the play.
Wow. And so for those of you guys who are watching and who will watch this later, you can get Travisville because it is in print. You can buy it. So you could just type in Travisville, you can buy the play because he is a published playwright. And so, and it's a beautiful, beautiful story. Like the way you told that story was I was just so inspired. And I was like, who knew? I was like, you could write, And so that's why I'm very inspired by that because I love artists who can wear many different hats and you can put, writer into that. So based off of the book that inspired you to write this play, for people who have not seen it, in 2 or 3 sentences, tell us, even though you gave us the history of the inspiration, but tell us a little bit about Travisville itself.
All right. Well, Travisville is it's about a city, an unnamed city in Texas, where there are plans to basically buy out and demolish and move a bunch of Black residents from this area to make room for a retail district. And in the midst of all this, it's like one of these cities where it's very much like Dallas. Everything is very calm. Everyone's very cordial. Everyone gets along. Gets along. Yeah. But there is a young man from out of town who shows up and is trying to sort of advocate for the residents of that area, and it just kicks off this whole sort of thing where you hear from the white civic leader in the play, but then you also hear from the several Black clergy and civil rights leaders their varying viewpoints on what's the correct way forward, which is something that I was always really interested in. And that's something that the book really brought into my mind. I think that I had this idea for the longest time that everyone was just sort of agreed, outside of on the national level where you had MLK and Stokely Carmichael, largely everyone was pushing for the same thing and agreed on a lot of the methods. And I had that idea. It's not real. It's not, but it's I had that idea.
Yeah.
And then I was like, I'm really curious and really diving into the infighting and the disagreements that happen between people who are pushing for things that are similar in a lot of ways. And I feel like I hadn't seen a lot of that yet. I know they exist, but I hadn't come across them. And so I was like, well, let me just try it and see if I can, throw my voice out there. And we had this killer cast that just
blew it out of the water. Yes, exactly.
Oh my God.
Yeah, with Rich Bajorn, my producer, he was in the show as well. He's behind the scenes. I don't know if he wants to show his face, but yeah. So I mean, part of the killer cast.
Bajorn killed the central role, and and everyone just brought so much to it, asked me tough questions, put me through the ringer. But I think that the play was much, much better for it because it was, it's a lot of characters. It was a play that was supposed to be 3 dudes in a room, and it grew out to 15 characters. And, I needed everyone to be like, I don't understand why I'm doing this. And I'm like, well, yeah, you're, I don't know why you're doing that either. And then, you had to draw on board, and so, that's basically what the story is.
Nice. Well, I was under the impression that you were doing double duty, with writing Travisville and, with it being in rehearsals and then shooting Midsummer. I always call it Midsommar, but Bjorn got on me about that. But but I was, that you were, waking up in the middle of the night, writing, and then running to set. But you shot that movie in Budapest.
Yeah.
Right? And so how did that work for you? Like going from that world to Travisville world and the writing world to the acting world, and those at the same time, or was it at the same time? That's what the impression I was getting.
It was at the same time. I left poor Steve Broadnax all by himself. He had all sorts of questions, and we would be like, he really took on a lot. I mean, like with this process, I really wish I could have been in the room. But Midsommar was one of those things that I auditioned for, and I'm primarily an actor. I can't say like, oh, cool, great to be in this movie of this guy who just made this really, huge film just like, a couple of years ago. I would love to do that, but I have a play going up, and I just can't go. And it was like, it was like sort of at that stage in my career where I needed to do, when good jobs came, I needed to do them.
Yeah, I hear that.
And don't get me wrong, it's like I'm glad that I got to do Midsommar. I'm really happy, but I was, like I really should be in the room because I think that I still need to do some work on this play. But Steve sort of distilled all of the questions and things down, and we would talk, whenever he had free time, whenever I had free time. That could be 2 a.m. my time, or like in the middle of the afternoon, or like if I had downtime on set, which there was a lot of. We would, chat and stuff like that. And then I would go to work whenever I had some free time. And, so it meant that, it really just meant that I would come home from set sometimes, hit the gym, and then just go to my hotel and just write for a few hours, and then send off some pages, go to sleep, and go to set the next day.
Now, was that an easy process? Because you're doing Midsommar about a cult. Right, like some cult-like things happening, and I'm being a little vague in case people want to see it. I think they should see it, but in case they haven't seen it, I don't want to give any spoilers. But dealing with the cult of personality, I guess that's what's coming up for me. But I will let you describe it more because you were in it. But playing Josh and then turning that off and then going to Travisville, was that an easy process, or was it just you just put things in compartments?
I think it was pretty compartmentalized, just because. Josh was a character that, in a lot of ways, was kind of in my wheelhouse as far as like the kinds of things that I had been doing. He's an intellectual guy. He's just nerding out about the culture that he has knows nothing about, and. So it was like that world was that world. The Travisville world was me being sort of having a bird's eye view of the whole thing, and seeing how I could make this story work, and like have the characters do things that make sense to them and stuff like that. So it was super compartmentalized, and thankfully I didn't have a whole lot of the emotional heavy lifting in that movie. Like that all belonged to mostly Florence Pugh and Jack Rayner. They had to do the heavy lifting on that. For me, it was like I was there. I was very much into the culture and trying to understand it, and then I was not there anymore.
Okay. Yeah. Exactly. That's a great way to sum it up. Let's segue into not being there anymore, The Good Place, right? Because a lot of hearts are broken because of after 4 seasons, The Good Place is over, and so everyone falls in love with your character Chidi, and full of love and anxiety, and just the way that you have portrayed Chidi. I wanted to ask you, what are some of your favorite moments about this, and how much? Because you mentioned in the beginning of this interview about how you were shy and how you got into the arts. Was Chidi easy for you to access because of that part of you, or not? But I just love The Good Place. I love your work in it, and you were nominated for an Emmy with that. How was your journey with that? And give me one or two of your favorite moments of being a part of that amazing cast.
Well, favorite moment was getting the call that I got the job, because that was
okay. Amen.
Yeah, that was amazing.
Yeah.
But like, I think it's hard to just pinpoint one moment.
Okay.
But if I had to, I think, when we were filming the finale and we got to go to the Acropolis at dawn when it was completely empty, that like who gets to see that? Now who gets to just go and see, ancient Greek ruins completely alone, as the sun is rising over Athens. It's like that was one of those moments where I'm like, this is my job right now. Like my job is to be here. Like how crazy is that? And so I think that was like one of those sort of, this is what I've always wanted, is to be able to do cool stuff because of my job.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that was that. And, I feel like, I don't know, like when it comes to like playing Chidi, like he's very different from me in a lot of ways, and then he's like a little more. He verbalizes all of his neuroses. Me, when I'm feeling particularly locked up and afraid, I just disappear and go away. And so, like sort of learning to externalize some of that stuff took a minute. And I feel like a lot of the notes that I got when we were actually making the show was just like he's spinning out a lot more. And I'm like, oh, okay, all right, cool. And because I think my attitude is a little bit more reserved. And so like it was, I don't know, at times it was difficult to get there, but there's a lot of stuff that I just connected to. And it was just like sort of letting it come out and be weird was what I was trying to do. And that was sort of the trick of the part, I think, was to just like let all that weirdness and all the, like neuroses that I have, just like let them go ahead and fly out, as opposed to holding them in and just kind of taking a lap by myself.
Well, you did an amazing job with that, letting it out, the neuroses come out. And you see the love that you guys have for each other, especially with having to say goodbye with you and your soulmate, right? Kristen Bell. And there's no acting going on when those last moments of when you leave. And so talk to me a little bit about that, going from getting that job, the best thing that happened to you was getting that phone call, to, okay, this is the end. I'm ready to move on to the next chapter. Even though in the show you were like that, how was Will with that? Where you were like, okay, I'm ready to put this and get to the next chapter of what's to come. So were you guys in the same kind of place on this journey?
In certain ways, yeah. I mean, I think it's, because like, like coming from theater, like you don't play a part for that long, and that's, even though like all the scripts are the same, it's like the scripts are different, the character is basically the same. And so I was ready to sort of move on to something different. I didn't want to leave that cast at all. I didn't want to leave that set at all. That was it was one of the most humane jobs that anyone could have on camera. I mean, like the days weren't always long. It was extremely efficient. Everyone was very nice. I got to still have a life while shooting the show. It was great. But then like, that cast everyone's like just so sweet. Everyone's so kind. And I didn't want that to end.
Gotcha. Yes.
But like I was ready to try on, like, what other sort of character could I get to play on camera? Because being on camera is that's relatively new to me, and I'm still figuring that out. Like I would watch in particular Ted and Kristen just sort of do things that felt very live, but still being able to fit into the camera. And me, it was like if I tried to sort of bring things down a bit, sometimes it would just die. And so it's like this weird sort of calibration that you have to find that I'm still working on. I'm still figuring it out. But like, it's just a different sort of tool. So I was like, I really want to try something else. If I'm fortunate enough to get another job, I really want to see if there's something else where I can like be on a set every day and figure out how to calibrate things to where it feels full, but doesn't feel like it's in the wrong medium.
Yeah, I hear that. I hear that. I mean, I feel the same way with After Forever when I was on set the first 2 seasons, and I was like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I'm looking at all these other veteran actors, and I'm like, let me follow them, because this TV thing, I'm a theater girl. I don't know what I'm doing, so I relate to that so much.
Yeah.
And that leads me to my next question about we broke up, because this is another chapter of your artistic life journey, and it's about a couple who's been together for 10 years, and you play Doug, and he has a surprise when he doesn't get the answer that he wants after he proposes. And I know that a lot of people are seeing you as this lovable Black nerd icon, and I want to know, one, how do you feel about that? And it's just an homage to your work, because people are loving your work. And what attracts you to the characters that you've chosen, especially Doug in this movie?
Well, it's I don't know. I mean, like, I guess it's like I want to. I don't do a whole lot of choosing. I do a lot of begging and hoping to get invited.
Oh, okay, amen.
It's like,
amen.
So it's I mean, like, this was something that was offered to me through Jeff Rosenberg, who worked on The Good Place as one of the ADs, and yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed the script. I thought it was like a really interesting take on a rom-com in ways. Like, it's kind of an anti-rom-com. It's it's messy in that way that I think a lot of breakups are, which is just sort of like the love isn't gone, but the two people involved in the relationship want something very different. And how do you move forward from that? And I just wanted to, I was interested in seeing how we could sort of bring that to life, and it just felt very adult and very much like what I had seen and sort of things that I experienced. And but yeah, when it comes to being a Black nerd icon, I never thought of it that way. I guess I always just sort of, like the parts that are offered to me are the ones that I grab, especially if they're interesting. And I'll be like, all right, cool, let's do it. And I think that maybe just my vibe just is that of a nerdy dude.
In a beautiful way, though, you just bring so much humanity to all of the you say you have to beg for these parts, but you just said at the same time too that Jeff said, "Hey man, come on and do this. We broke up, come play deck." So it sounds like that's changing. That's good. That's good.
Yeah. Some things are definitely changing.
Some things are definitely changing.
Some things are definitely changing in that regard.
Yeah. Which I want to go into the next question of the Underground Rover that just came out on Amazon Prime, and you play a character named Royal, which is opposite of the characters that you've been playing as far as the ones that we've talked about in this interview. And the one thing about this show, I'm halfway through and I'm loving it, but I love the nuances of that Barry Jenkins is using to tell the story. And it's not, as some people have said in conversations about how it triggers us in our trauma. There's so much love and care behind this piece. And I know that it's based on the Pulitzer Prize winner book by Colston Whitehead, The Underground Railroad. And so what attracted you to Royal, and why do you love playing him? Because it is a different role that we're used to you seeing. And I love that you're doing this role because it shows your range in your art and your acting. So tell me a little bit about Royal.
Well, Royal is he's a freeborn man. Who our main character, Cora, who's played by Tuso Mbedu, encounters on her journey. And they develop this sort of interesting kind of tender relationship between the two of them. And, like, this is one of those things where, like, I knew that this was, like, the project had been in development for a long time. And this wasn't on my radar of something that I would be, even asked to audition for. And I was looking forward to watching it. The book was something that I was a little bit afraid to read, just because stories like that really do affect me, and I get really upset. And so I'm careful around taking that stuff in.
Yeah.
but I got an audition for it, and I was like, oh wow, like I'm going to take my time and try to do this right, because this may be the only chance that I get to play this part. It's like, rather than going in and looking to get the job, I was just like, let me just give the performance I want to give.
Yes.
And if that's all that comes of it, that's great. And yeah, so I auditioned for it, and then actually we were heading down to Comic-Con with The Good Place as a cast, and I got the call that I actually was going to be doing this show. And I was just sort of beside myself that I was going to get to, work with Barry Jenkins. And,
that's amazing. That's amazing.
Like, that's nuts. That's crazy. And so for me, that was like the biggest draw. And I think that beyond that, like, because I did read the book after I got the part. I think the thing that really sort of drew me into the story was that it's one of those shows that it's about resistance more than it is endurance, first off. And then I think the other thing that really stuck out to me is that in this story, there's not one great redeeming white savior to let people off the hook.
Yes.
And so it is really triggering in a lot of ways. And for anyone watching it, it's like, it's definitely not a binge. It is a take your time with it. And if you can't do it, you can't do it, and that's fine. But like, it is intentionally triggering, but I think that there is a lot of hope and there's a lot of joy that I think that when we're talking about stories that deal with this sort of subject matters, that aspect is completely missing.
Yeah, I think that's what it is for me, because you bring up a good point, because as I'm watching it, it's just I'm like, this is different. Even though, like you said, it is triggering, but it's not, I don't even have the words for it. It's just unlike what we've seen in the past with our stories, especially when they're not told by us and through our lens, and how it could just be gratuitous. I can't say that word, but you know what I mean. Gratuitous, or what, I cannot say that word. You would think I can't say the word. But anyway, with that said, I just feel like Barry just did such a good job with the care and the love through the pain of it. And so that's the only best way I can describe it. But how was it like working with him?
He's such a normal dude. He's really smart and very focused and knows what he's looking for, but he's such a normal guy, which was really shocking. I was sort of expecting him to just sort of be an orb of light.
Yes.
Form of this man.
Yes.
To actually be able to digest it somehow. But he's just a normal guy and very down to earth, and has really great ideas about how to maneuver a scene or maneuver within a scene. And he trusts his actors. He's a great collaborator. You feel empowered to do good work with him. He's very open to you trying stuff. And I mean, some of it was just like, I would have pitches for certain scenes, and and he said on this this other roundtable that we did, I was like, yeah, man, like Barry would like listen to my ideas, and I'd be like, hey man, I have this thing that I want to try, and then he'd be like, just show me. And I was like, that's great. And then he was like, oh, well, we were on day like 106 out of 116. So like, I was just sort of tired, on some level, like just do your thing. It's like, it's fine. But I think it's the trust that he has in his actors that just, to let you play while also crafting something that is so lovingly rendered and very meticulous and detail oriented. Like that's a hell of a juggling act.
Yeah.
Somehow does it so well.
I haven't, like I said, I'm not up to where you are yet. Like it's the binge watch it for those who can, more power to you. But on episode 4 right now. So I look forward to everything that you bring to this, because just doing my research and looking into the kind of character Royal is, I'm excited to see another side that we haven't seen before in your work, as far as on TV and film. And so I don't know how, what do you want people to walk away with when they do see the show?
I just want people to have questions. I want people to have questions about who they would have been in that time, in these scenarios. I mean, I think it's real easy for all of us to think that we all would have been abolitionists and we all would have whooped slave masters' ass. We're all but the fact of the matter is the world is big, and you go ahead and you fight back. There's a whole society out there that is just coming to get you, to punish you for that.
Yeah.
So there's that, and then also white people that think oh, well, if I was alive back then, I would have stood up and said hell no too. And it's no, you would not have. None of us would have done the things that we think we would have done. I mean, we're watching, all sorts of crazy stuff happening right now, and we have all kinds of opinions, and we're all just sitting here looking at it.
I was just talking to a friend about that the other day. I was just like, the same people that are like, well, if I was a slave, I would have taken that whip and I would have whooped the master's ass. And I'm like, well, meanwhile, our votes are being suppressed and I don't see nobody. And I'm like, those same people need to be like, okay, let's go. Let's march and let's get in these streets. Let's get these votes. Let's reverse these votes. And there's a lot of silence around it. And I was saying to a friend how upset I am. I want those same people that are like, I take that whip to get this voter suppression out of here.
Yeah. And I say this is as I'm one of those people that definitely is oh man, somebody should do something about that.
Oh no.
It's I mean, we all do it to a degree, but I know for a fact that I've done that. And so, it's my hope that people come away from this thinking about who they would have been, what their reaction actually would have been, especially when the stakes are as high as they are. Because it's if you help someone who is enslaved, you could wind up dead.
Yeah.
If you run away, you could wind up dead. It's the stakes are really, really, really high. And and the risks are just astronomical. So I don't know. I guess it's just I want people to think about that and to sort of look at our own society a little bit too, and just be oh, what are the ways in which I'm sort of letting stuff slide just because it's too uncomfortable or too risky to get involved.
Yeah.
And I know that I have those things. That's something that I came away with after watching it, and I'm okay. So I'm hoping that other folks have some variation on that same sort of thing.
Well, it's hard to believe this when you say that sometimes you have that tendency, because I don't know if it's just something that popped in my head. So I don't know if you want to talk about it, but with the Malcolm X situation with the movie and how you spoke out about that, and which I really admired you for it as well, as far as the excuse using not to show it, with the volunteer veterans group that you volunteer for. So I feel like you have that fight in you.
Sometimes. I mean, it's it was a Twitter post. It's it's different than actually getting out in the streets or going to a place and deciding a plan of action to engage with someone. I think that for me, it was just sort of I got to say something. This is too messed up to not say anything. And, granted, it wasn't nowhere in that executive order, by the way, does it say, the movie Malcolm X cannot be screened. It's that doesn't say anything that direct, but it's just, it leaves the door open for interpretation that can silence a lot of voices that might be critical of the United States in some way. And I think that's dangerous. And that really freaked me out. And the fact that, the story of Malcolm X, which is just, this is a guy who existed, this is not you can't watch that. This isn't, Malcolm X Demon Slayer. This is just the story of Malcolm X.
Yeah.
So we should we should know about that, and it shouldn't be hidden from people. But certain people at a certain academy thought that it might run afoul of that executive order, and they were following orders. And so I was like, well, I got to say something. I mean, no one else really has to, but I think this is weird, and it scares me a little bit, and I just had to say something.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you did. Because when I saw that, when I read that, I was like, good for him, because you're right, because it's a form of censorship that goes against, what to press us in our fight, in that sense of like, because Malcolm X is people see it as a Black history, but he's American history. That's a part of American history. And then when you start shutting that down, that becomes an issue. And like you see it now with the conversations with the critical race theory, it's the same thing happening again. It's like, I'm going to interpret this and certain things that are factual, but if it pertains to the Black experience, we want to use this as an excuse to suppress it. But anyway, that's a whole other conversation. That's like that's a Don Lemon CNN type of, that's a whole nother interview. But I want to get to your cherry pick. But before we do get to your cherry pick, I wanted to just check in with you about your writing. Are you is there something we're going to see, anything coming up soon? Are you continuing on that, or is that on pause? Where are you at with that?
It's definitely on pause for a second. I mean, like, I don't know if anyone else who writes had this whole thing happen to them, but like during the pandemic, I just was completely uninspired to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so not a whole lot is happening on that front. I did start something, and like at the heart of it was, I don't know, I was like trying to respond to the police killings and things like that, and I just found myself just not wanting to write that. I wanted to find another way to sort of express certain experiences that I've had without it being rooted in, pain and suffering.
I hear that.
So we'll see. I mean, like, but it's definitely one of those processes that like eats my lunch.
Yeah.
Yes. I need to be like really jazzed to do it.
Yeah.
If I'm not, then I should probably just leave it alone for a second.
Yeah. But also too, a form of self-care is always great, because with a lot of artists, the conversations was when this pandemic first hit about, what should I do? What should I not do? And a lot of us, and I speak for, this is my experience in my bubble, same thing you're doing, just given that time to go, you know what, this is where I'm at. I don't want to write. I don't want to do anything. I just want to, figure out a way to give myself some Black joy. I think that's a beautiful thing, and also too, finding a balance. And this is why the cherry pick coming up is perfect, because we have the stories that we want to see and that we've been asking for us, by us, about us. And also too, but finding that balance of joy and laughter and just some things that are not rooted in our trauma. And so that's why we're going to go into your cherry pick, because I think this is perfect segue to that. So yes, tell me about your cherry pick.
Oh yeah, it's like easily one of my favorite movies of the last several years. 40-year-old version. It is all the things. It is funny. It is moving. It is beautifully shot. It makes me feel nostalgic. I was watching it while I was in LA, and I was like, oh man, I miss home so much. And it also sort of goes into this thing of, it touches on the idea of, people exploiting Black pain for artistic gain, and and having someone that's gonna like push up against that and be like, nah, I'm not gonna do the thing that you want me to do. I'm gonna do the thing that I want to do. And but it's just it's so funny, and it's also, the raps are good.
Yes.
so real and familiar to me, and I loved it from top to bottom. Every second of this movie just filled me with overwhelming joy. And it's also one of those things where it's like, how like when you're watching a play, you'd be watching a drama, but there could be some just intensely laugh out loud funny moments.
Yeah.
Or you could be watching something that is a comedy that suddenly drops into something very, very effective and like sort of hits you in your chest. And I feel that like when it comes to movies, there's like this there's a tone that needs to be set, and people sort of adhere to that more often than not. And this is one of those movies that sort of plays in that realm of like having that wild journey where it still all connects like a play, but it's a movie. It's just like I just loved it. I was just I finished it and I was just like, oh my God. I just loved it. It was just amazing.
Yeah, I was in that area as well when I finished it, because I was just like, oh my, it came right on time. Just the timing was right. It was so much needed, and just to be in a room to just laugh out loud and laugh was just, it's a beautiful movie. And for those who haven't seen it, please watch it. It's really, really good.
I don't know if I've not laughed that hard in, I mean, it's not like a laugh a minute kind of movie. It's stuff, but it's like the stuff that made me laugh as hard as I've laughed at a movie. And it's like, it just got me. That movie got me good. It was great.
Okay. No, this was a good cherry pick. Well, listen, that's it. Like, these interviews are just in and out. It's a way for me to just, see your face and connect and just check in on how you're doing. And I just wanted to say thank you so much for taking the time, because you have a lot of beautiful, amazing things going on. And I just want to tell you in person how much you inspire me, even though we don't see each other every day, but your work touches me. And so I'm just glad that I was able to have you on to talk more about it. So, yeah.
Thanks. No, I miss just getting to just running into you.
I know. I think the last time I saw you we ran into each other on 42nd Street. We went to that little wine bar.
Yeah.
And we sat in the corner and had food. But I can't remember what we were coming from, a show but I ran into you on the corner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't remember. I feel like, I don't know. I feel it was like me, Ali Chinasa, you were, I don't remember what show we were coming from.
I don't remember. And then because we were talking, when you guys were talking to us about it, and I was like, oh, I need to go see it. And then we just started drinking and eating. So that was it.
Yeah.
So anyway, listen, I thank you again so much. And that's it. I'll see you on the side. So don't go anywhere, but I'm going to say goodbye to my people, and then I'll chat with you in 2 seconds.
All right.
Okay. Bye-bye. Guys, thank you so much for watching and supporting, and thank you for sticking around even after that technical difficulty. Sorry about that. That's never happened, but you know what? We just roll with it. We roll with the punches. I feel a little off kilter because of it, but it's okay, because Will was like, no, we're going to do this. This is good. So it's just me just wanted everything to be perfect, but it was perfect. It turned out to be perfect. That's the lesson, right? That's the lesson. I got the lesson. Anyway, before we go, I just want to let you guys know about my next week. Same time. It's going to be 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, but my guest is going to be Tracy Tom. So please join us next Sunday, same time, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can check us out on Facebook Live and YouTube Live. And that's it. So I'll see you guys next week, guys. Bye-bye.